Hey, folks, welcome to the Accessible Hunter Podcast. I'm Greg Trainer, along with my co host, Mike Hudson. And today we're joined by Ryan Harrison out of St. Louis, Missouri. And we're going to have an interesting podcast about parachuting and competing in the shooting sports. But first, Mike, what's going on in South Carolina, brother?
Man, today we woke up, it was bright and early. Chilly mornings, man. It's getting close to fall, and so I had to go sit in the sunshine. It's one of those paralysis things. It doesn't take long to get cold. So I had to go out there and thaw out for a little bit. I'm part lizard, man.
Dude, I'm right there with you. It's 40 degrees here in PA this morning, and I love October. I love everything about the weather. It
Yeah,
getting colder at night, but heck, I got a hat on and a long sleeve shirt, and I had two blankets on last night and was wearing a stocking cap to bed. So
right.
fall,
Right.
fall weather is here. Uh,
It's here, man. I don't know how you do, but it just seems like most quads I know they end up sleeping with a blanket over their head. You know?
I, I wear one of those stocking caps all night, so my wife just thinks I'm such an attractive man at night. So,
There you go.
but Ryan, what's going on in St. Louis, man?
Man, it's starting to cool down finally, from the hot, humid corn sweat that happens in the Midwest over late summer. We're getting to we'll get like probably 2, 3 weeks of like really nice weather per year.
Right.
And then, then it'll just get into cold town. So right now, probably close to anybody else in the Midwest. We're doing the whole 40 degrees in the morning, 80 degrees in the afternoon. So
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but like I'll have the habit of like leaving the house in a coat or a hoodie, and then I'll throw it in the back of the van, and then I never bring it inside.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the back of the van just has like 10 hoodies you got to bring in at once. So
That's right.
Exactly, Ryan. Well, man, we've been following you online for a while, and we wanted to have you on the podcast. But for the folks that don't know about you, Ryan, and don't know your story, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit and telling us a little bit about your disability and how you came to be?
yeah, so I was average white guy, middle-aged motorcycle rider before my spinal cord accident, and had a motorcycle accident as most do in that category, and that was May of 2021. So I'm still pretty young in the spinal cord world when it comes to some of the other people that I've met that have been paralyzed forever. It seems like, and so just doing all the new guy steps with being just under 5 years of paralysis, and just kind of
Yeah.
figuring some of the figuring out some of the ways to just like, how does this still work, like you're still like, I was late to the party on car transfers. So like I just did car transfers like in the last 6 months, like my first one. So like that's cool, right? Like
Yeah.
not having to always rely on a wheelchair van when you need to. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Everybody's recovery is different. And in my case, it wasn't just a spinal cord injury. I tried ripping my leg off, so I had like a 37 millimeter tear in my like groin pit, plus a broken pelvis. I de-sleeved my left leg at the like the shin. So there's just a lot of wound vacs and a lot of healing. It's one of those things that my charge nurse at rehab, she was like, I almost didn't admit you because like you were just so, you just needed to like heal. So, it's just there's a lot of things that I just didn't learn in rehab that I've had to like make an effort to learn after I got home. So,
Right.
it's been luckily St. Louis has a pretty good spinal cord support system. We've got Paraquad here that does a lot for us. We've got like an adaptive gym with all the things you could ever want with the like the FES bikes and the robot legs, and not there, you can't call them OTs or PTs because it's a gym, but they're all like basically off duty people working the gym, helping you transfer and get set up and stuff. So there's a lot of good support here. So luckily I've been able to help figure it out as we go.
Well, welcome to the spinal cord world.
Thanks.
1 year with spinal cord world is like 7 years as a dog.
Oh
So
no.
it doesn't take long to add up pretty quick. And Greg and I are the epitome of those old guys. I'm on year 30. Greg's over 20s.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we're trucking along good. But Ryan, what was one of the biggest challenges, man, right when you first got hurt, other than the just natural healing process and learning? But what was one of the biggest processes that you faced as soon as you realized, hey, this is my new reality?
Um, I mean, I accepted my fate pretty early. So like whenever I woke up and they told me I was paralyzed, as a guy who worked in motorcycles and paid my mortgage with them for over 20 years, whenever
Yeah.
I woke up and they told me that, it was just kind of like, oh crap, they got me. It happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
so it was just kind of, mentally, kind of accepted my fate pretty early and just said, all right, well, let's figure it out. Luckily, I mean, I'm saying this in front of some quads, right? But it's one of those things where it's like, like in rehab you learn that like there's especially high sea level people that I've
Oh,
got it
yeah.
pretty good, right? So like I can use my fingers. I've got upper body strength, so it's something that I've had to work for just because of the upper body strength wasn't there with a
Sure.
TBI as well, that I had to work through. But 4 years later we got it back. And I'd say the biggest problem is really just figuring out how inaccessible the world is
Right.
after when before you become paralyzed. Wheelchair vans exist. The ADA was signed in back in the 90s, like five
Right.
presidents ago. Like it's one of those things where it's just like in the back of your mind you're like, oh, they got that figured out. And then
Right.
you wake up and you're like, oh, brother, they do not have this figured out,
At
right?
Not
Like,
all. Right.
not
you
even
know,
close. That's right,
so
Ryan.
I,
Ryan,
I'd say really just navigating the perils of the world has been the hardest thing. Learning to Google Maps places before you go, figure out where the parking is, how far you
Fair
got to
enough. That's a
roll to
good one.
get. It really just figuring out how to be one of those. I like to call us outside cripples.
Right.
Because there's plenty of people that they just don't get outside.
Don't
They
go.
don't leave their
right.
house. One of my favorite one of my favorite dark humor things whenever we're out in the world, and like somebody, like, they're not like disgusted, they're just not used to it, and they're just like, they're just like not sure why you're asking for the access or something that you're doing. And you're like, oh yeah, no, like they let us outside now. Like we can have
Yeah.
jobs, right? Like, you know, it's just,
We're here.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I think that's really I think that's really just it. Is really just figuring out how to be out in the world, and I think that's one of the things also, just to tie it into some of our topic today, is one of the things I loved about shooting sports is shooting sports was, there was never a no. It was a,
Right.
let's figure out how to say yes,
Yep.
especially in IDPA. Man, I was fortunate enough to get a grant from Battle Buddy Three Gun
Yeah.
through one of their contests in order to get to the Adaptive Defensive Shooting Summit in Epping, New Hampshire, at the Sig Sauer Academy, which like really gave me the confidence to just be like, you know what, we can figure it out. We can do this. Let's figure out what other disciplines we can do. And I came home from that just like charged up, and just I messaged my local IDPA, uh, you know, what match director is, I guess, what they're calling them. And I was
Right.
like, hey man, I did this thing. I know how to do it safely. Like, if you let me come, we'll do it. And little did I know at that time that IDPA actually has like some rules and stuff for that, so that you can do that already. But I mean, it was just cool to just instantly, he was like, yeah man, just come here, we'll figure it out. we'll talk it through. So,
Perfect.
that's really just what I love about this, is that nobody ever says no. They just might not have figured out how to do it yet. And I've been doing a lot of figuring out how to do it lately.
Right, Ryan, were you a big shooter before your injury, or is this something that you got into kind of after your spinal cord injury?
Was never competitive, but I mean, like I had a few firearms, but it was never as deep of a problem to my wallet as it is now. Uh, but it was also one of those things that we just, hey, let's try this one. What can I do? I mean, IDPA is pretty simple. If you get a pistol and a holster and a place to go do it, you can pretty much just show up and arrive. Obviously, I do the indoor ones because the outdoor ones are usually in gravel lots, and if you've ever
Right.
pushed through gravel, it's not fun. I can compete in my manual. I try to compete in my manual chair as much as possible, just because I like the aspect of moving and shooting.
Yeah.
I will absolutely compete in my power chair if I have to, but I mean, it's kind of like just you know, driving like a forklift through some of those gravel pits, man. Like you just end up spinning or getting stuck, and it's just not fun. So the more I can do it in my manual chair, the better. But I also absolutely love talking to people who that's their only option, is to do it, and just say, like, all right, so like you got to approach it this way because if you go that way, especially if you've ever done IDP or seen IDPA, there's usually like sticks on the ground that they tape, and so
Right.
your wheelchair has to like roll over that, and you're usually screwing it up, and they got to retape it or it gets stuck. I mean, it's part of the process, but we figure it out, and as long as you're having fun, that's really what it's about at the end of the day.
There you go. How has some of the equipment that you've seen over your time evolved? I mean, just stuff you use versus stuff you've seen other guys use. Technology's becoming huge.
Yeah,
Uh,
3D printers, man. I mean, there's really the 3D printers are the way to go. There's many different ways to mount your like a pistol, or even just like I know a guy that has a 3D printed apparatus to like hold his shotgun in between rounds and whatnot, so that he can move stations.
yeah.
And I think it's really just like that ingenuity of 3D printing. I mean, if you can think it, you can do it. The process that I had whenever I did it, and I can actually probably grab it here in a second if we want to, is the coming from motorcycles, I was like really into ram mounts, for
Yeah. Yeah.
so I was like, all right, well, 1 inch ball, I know that my down tube on my wheelchair is this size. If I could do that, then Safariland has this QLS system,
Right.
and I was looking into the QLS system, and I happened upon, just searching the internet on how to get these things to work together, this guy on a Tacoma forum that was trying to figure out how to like mount his pistol and holster in his truck when, as opposed to just keeping it in his appendix as he drove. And I was just like, man, that would work. Like the QLS system to the RAM ball system, I just need to do that. Ended up figuring out the file, got it to a friend to print it. We found out that if you 3D print that, the rubberized RAM ball isn't is way stickier than a 3D printed ball, even if you texture it. So I just got wrapped it in some goon tape to keep it, to give it some tackiness, and that's how I do it. I've got a ball on my power chair too. That's just like it's just a ram ball with the two holes on it, and it's just like in the track on the side of my chair. So,
No.
just bolt it in there. So if I'm pretty much 2 seconds away from putting a holster on any of my wheelchairs at any time if somebody's like, hey, you want to go shoot? So I try to be as ready to go as anybody wants to be. But yeah,
I've I
Yeah,
love it, man.
yeah, but I mean, really, I'd say that, the technology, in 4 years hasn't changed. It's easy to say the technology in guns hasn't changed much, but I think 3D printing has really opened the world. I mean, even if you look at like somebody like Mark out in California, abilities, like all the quad tools that guy makes and designs, like, I mean, like even just life in general, not even just firearms parts. So
Ryan, you also do a lot of trap shooting and air rifle shooting as well,
mhm.
not just defensive and three gun shooting. I've seen some of the pictures of pheasant hunting that you've done
Yeah.
for charity. How does that kind of go with your trap shooting? Like, how do you train and prepare for trap shooting and pheasant hunting both?
I mean, luckily, pheasant hunting and trap shooting, at least when you're pheasant hunting like on a guided hunt, they don't tell you this, but they sleep the birds and then put them in the field for you.
Right?
And then you and the guided dog go out and the dog finds it, and then the guy will, your guide will you know
Coax the bird up.
well, yeah, he'll especially when you're in a wheelchair, you got to like prepare, you got to get ready, you got to get in position. And I treat it just like I would lining up to a trap house. The bird could go this way or this way, or
Right.
anyway. And so I really just kind of keep it like that. And I'd say it's very, trap in its essence is, a way to not kill as many birds, but get all the training in that you need.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say there's a lot of parallels. I definitely do it again. That one was another one of like, we've got a really good Missouri disabled sportsman here in Missouri. And those guys do a lot of hunts and they're very active. Unfortunately, I've never actually hunted with them. I do plan to. They got a snow goose one that I think's happening this winter that I want to try and get on. But I think it's one of those things that this pheasant one wasn't even with them. It was just a charity that I saw that was, or it's a group. So Wilnor Outdoors, they're like a pheasant farm slash hunting preserve, and they were hosting a St. Louis Fire Department search and rescue dog charity. So the St. Louis Fire Department search and rescue dogs aren't funded by the government; they're funded by people donating stuff to them. And so I was like, well, that's awesome. I want to be a part of that. Let's see if we can do that. And, just kind of show up and say, hey, can we do this? And they're
Right.
like, yeah, we'll figure it out. So, I had a freewheel on the front of my manual chair. The ground was a little soft, so I did get pushed through the field a little bit, but it was just awesome. Like again, it was one of those, they just said, if you can get in the field, we'll figure it out.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I mean, that pheasant hunting it's the first time I actually even hunted outside of like some like BB guns and doves as a kid, right? Like
Right.
um but yeah, and then trap shooting, I mean, the ATA has a great model right now. They just updated it for wheelchair users to be able to be competitive against each other, and kind of drew the line in the sand between what they used to call the chair category. Now it's the
Okay.
wheelchair category. So the old chair category was able-bodied people could be shooting from a stool, or whatever that looks like for them, or a scooter or whatever. And they really drew the line in the sand this year, which I love, is that they basically said wheelchair shooters are wheelchair shooters,
Right.
and you guys can still shoot from whatever you were shooting from, but you're not going to be in this category for competitive trophies and winnings and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I really appreciate that they did that, because as you guys know, if you don't have a lot of core function, you're not shooting perfect games, right? Like
No.
it's hard, where somebody who's has full function but might not have the balance from shooting from a stool. I mean, you can very well still shoot a perfect game pretty easily.
Right.
So it's just nice to be seen like that, which really really makes me happy to re-up my membership with the ATA this year. So I'm just stoked to see them make the provisions for that.
Right. And that way it just sets a category that you can understand.
Yeah,
All too
absolutely.
often, if you got a guy, and it's no knock on any disability, but if you got a guy
No,
that's an amputee but full core strength and all that, kind of hard to compete with that when you've got spinal cord injury that
yeah.
it's a limitation that you have to adjust for.
Well, and
Um,
absolutely, and that's something that USA Shooting and World Shooting Parasport takes into account for Paralympic, like Olympic trap. Is they've got the chair category, which is PT1. Um,
right.
you pretty much you pretty much have to be a full-time wheelchair user for the most part to be in that category. And then they've got PT2 and PT3, which are upper limb difference or amputees, or limited strength or something.
Hmm.
That puts you in that category. And then the other one is you're fine from the waist up, but maybe you do have a single or double leg amputation or something, right? Like
Yeah.
they did a really good job of drawing the line in those sand for those three categories. But it's just not an easy sport to get into.
Along those lines, Ryan, you compete all over the country, right? This isn't just in St. Louis. I mean, you have a lot of travel matches or travel shoots. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, to an extent. Yeah, with air rifle, last year I did Alabama for Move United Nationals. We qualified that for that, and then I think I came in like eighth place in my class. Missed the cut for finals just barely, which was a little bit of a bummer, but they also, you can only have eight in the finals, so it is what it is. And they
Right.
they included the under 15 in that final, so it was like everybody shooting together. So if it had just been adults and final eight, I would have made the cut, but it was everybody mixed together. So I didn't, which was also ended up being really cool because this young gal from Texas ended up pretty much winning everything. So it was just cool to see
Awesome.
her, kind of show all these other guys that, fully equipment, you know, lots of money backing them as far as equipment and whatnot goes. So it was just cool to see that happen from one of the younger shooters. So
When you're traveling like that, Ryan, do you usually fly or drive?
so I drive as much as possible for New Hampshire. I flew, which from St. Louis to basically Boston is where we flew into. It'd be a really long drive. Uh,
Yeah.
and I didn't have since it was a week long event, I didn't have that much PTO at work to take
Yeah.
off. So we flew and made it really easy. But for pretty much everything else, so like Michigan at Hillsdale, we drove there. Alabama, I drive there. If there's an event at Sparta, which is Sparta, Illinois, that's only an hour away from my house. I'm pretty fortunate there that, basically the ATA's biggest event is only an hour away from my house, so I don't even need to get a
Right.
hotel for that one.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I mean, it's driving is for me the way to go, especially just because
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about, is my chair going to get damaged?
Exactly.
And then like on top of it, like flying with a chair and a firearm just sounds like the worst, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
like
We
Yes.
you can do both, but together just sounds stressful, especially because you got to be able to you're the last off the plane, and
Right.
then it usually takes them forever to get your chair. Then you got to make sure it's not damaged. And then you also have to be at gate check-in to get
get
your
your
firearm
firearm.
at a specific
Right.
time. Otherwise, it
Yeah.
like disappears and goes to like to where you really have to get like even more security involved, because then they think
What
they have an unclaimed firearm, right? So
when you're traveling to events and things like this, Ryan, do you have sponsorships or grants? I know you mentioned a grant earlier, but
yeah.
is there
um,
opportunities for people to get into this without funding it themselves?
There is, you're still going to end up forking a lot of the bill over, but there are some like, like because like Kelly Brush does an amazing job of making grants and things, but they're
Yeah.
not going to buy firearms. They're, they might help pay for travel. One of the things that I got 2 years ago was Move United had a grant for travel and hotel for people who qualified for national. So I got that, and that was like, I think that was like $500, which helped pay for about half the hotel. Since we were there for 4 days, a couple $100 a night, it adds up for sure. But
Yes, yes, it
it's
does.
also nice to be able to take that burden off. And then this year, through my work with the Disabled Athletes Sports Association here in St. Louis, which is kind of like our Paralympic sports club.
Right.
So I coach air rifle with them. I compete air rifle with them, and then we're working to try and put together a chair squad to shoot ATA this year, or next year rather. So we're trying to figure out how to do that, but they were they I guess they nominated me. So the Move United uh is the one who they're sponsored by the Hartford, which is an insurance company.
Right.
Hmm.
They had a Human Achievement Award that they do, which sounds a lot fancier, I think, than it really is. Because like a Human Achievement Award sounds like a Nobel Peace Prize to me, but like,
Yeah.
but really what it was the grant allows people who are trying to get to the next level of their sport, to give them some funding to do that and go do the next level. So that one was a big one. That one was a $5,000 grant.
Wow.
Nice.
Or was it 2,500? I can't remember. It was a big grant though. I mean, usually when you get a grant, it's like $500.
Right.
Okay.
But it was a really big grant, and basically helped me with a really big problem that I had going in to go shoot the Hillsdale for Paratrap at it was a World Cup. It got downgraded to a Grand Prix, but either way, it was an international Paratrap competition up in Hillsdale. And I ran into a problem. I was training at Brittany Shooting Park in Illinois at it was like a multi-zone shoot, I think. And so I just got done shooting like one of the best days that I ever shot in American Trap. I shot doubles, singles, and handicap for the first time. Well, so I shot handicap and doubles for the first time. Did a really impressive job to me, like kind of set some personal bests. And I ended up putting my shotgun away at the end of the day, and I noticed that my stock was cracked.
Oh no.
And I was 6 weeks out from going to Hillsdale to go shoot the Grand Prix. And I was just devastated, because I was like, all right, well, I just bought this Browning like maybe with less than a year ago. It's a 7.25 Satori with a maple stock and everything. So it's a pretty, it's not the most expensive shotgun by any means, because you can spend a lot of money on a Perazzi.
Oh yeah.
But it's not a cheap shotgun. It's not a Mossberg 500. So it's still a couple $1,000s. And being disabled, working full time, putting all this money into the other things, I just didn't have the money to do that. So I started reaching out. I reached out to Browning first, and I was like, "Hey guys, trying shooting your product. I'm not sponsored, but like, can we fix it? Can you send me a loaner? Like, what's the deal? Like, I'm not trying to pull one over on you, but like, I'm shooting an international competition for USA Shooting. Like, can we do anything?" Kind of crickets. They never really got back to me about a loaner. They did tell me to send my shotgun in, which was funny because they asked me to ship it to Arnold, Missouri, which is 10 minutes from my house.
Okay.
Wow.
But you can't just drop it off.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
you can't show up
So
at the office.
I had to drive 25, 30 minutes to Bass Pro, ship it to Arnold 10 minutes from my house, and do it that way, which was, kind of backwards, but whatever. Like I don't expect special treatment, but it was also just kind of like you're,
Yeah.
you're 10 minutes away. Like I don't even have to get on the highway to get to you guys.
Right.
So they took it crickets. There is no, like, there's minimal communication. I'm freaking out. At that time, I was doing a weekly ATA trap league at Sparta, Illinois. So I was driving to Sparta every Thursday night. And there's a shotgun shop there called Gibson Firearms, and the lady that runs it is awesome. I was talking to her. I was really like weighing my options because at that time, since it broke, I was using my 20 gauge Benelli just to keep,
Practicing.
yeah, just keep practicing. I mean, obviously it's not the same, but at least just trying to keep the hand-eye coordination up. And she had this Beretta on the floor that was priced pre-tariff pricing, and also just a really great deal. I ended up buying that from her. So I ended up with a Beretta 694 Pro with the TSK stock, because after I had talked to the USA shooting coach about my situation, he was like, so if you can, buy the nicest gun you can with a TSK stock, and we'll figure it out when we get to Hillsdale, as far as fitting and whatnot goes. So I was like, all right, cool. That's what I did. And the grant from the Hartford actually was what helped me afford that, because
Right.
otherwise I wouldn't have bought such a nice shotgun. But yeah, that's like the ride that I had to take to make it to Hillsdale.
Right.
And yeah, it wouldn't have been possible without funding. I mean, it probably would have. I could have bought a cheaper shotgun for sure, but I was just trying to do what the coach said, and
Sure.
Right.
do what we had to do, and then ended up being able to come home with a podium on that. So
Hard
wasn't
to go
my
wrong that way.
yeah, which is fun because it wasn't is my real first time ever shooting in, like, outside of just like trying it at a range that happened to have Olympic trap or bunker trap. I had tried it for like 2 games, never shot it again. And if you guys know anything about it, it's like 20, 30 miles an hour faster. Instead of
Wow.
one trap machine in the bunker, it's 15. So
Wow.
there's a lot of different ways it could go. It goes harder angles, it goes faster. It's a much crazier time. So being able to shoot that my first round, and I was just like, wasn't the best because I didn't get a minimum qualifying score to travel with them yet. But there's just so much working against me, new gun that I hadn't really shot,
Right.
shooting a new game that's way faster, way harder, and then doing that was, I mean, it was pretty difficult, but
Y- y-
we
y-
managed to make it work. And obviously there's a ton of room for improvement. So I'm excited to see where that sport goes. But unfortunately, we did not get announced for the 2028 Paralympics. So there's no quad preparing for that. But there's still a chance that it could be in the next one after that. So, we will continue to try and push for it, because
Absolutely.
Paratrap's only been around since 2017, so
Mhm.
it's still a really young sport, as far as parasports go. But
Sure.
obviously, Olympic trap's been around forever.
Yeah.
The cool thing about paratrap, and also the kind of crappy thing about paratrap, is it's the same exact game as Olympic trap. You're just doing it from a wheelchair,
Yep.
So
Yep.
there, there's
It,
no other. You're shooting the same game, same speed, same everything that the able-bodied guys are, but your scores are a little lower. But it's, outside of the wheelchair, there's really no,
Other accommodations.
yeah, there's no other accommodations. Like you just,
It's not slower. It's not,
yeah, they
exactly.
don't handicap it in any way. It's just it is what it is, and it's a fast game, and it's a lot of fun.
When
Um,
when you had mentioned that it's so much faster, Ryan, I can't imagine faster. I've shot trap, maybe a handful of times
yeah,
in as a quadriplegic in my chair. And I just can't imagine faster. I know Mike has a setup on his property. He shoots more trap than I do, but at that Olympic level, the hand-eye coordination that you have to have is just amazing, whether you're doing that from a seated position as we three are doing, or you're
yeah.
able-bodied and standing.
Well,
I mean,
even the able-bodied, like if you look at some of the, like there's like a trap forum that those guys will talk about, like anybody tried international or bunker trap, and they'll say, and then everybody will just be like, oh, like they'll shoot perfect games in American trap all day, but then they'll be like, man, I can't even break a 10 in international trap.
yeah. No,
So, to be able to break over a 10 for me in a wheelchair after seeing people who are amazing, probably close, if not are all-American ATA shooters, struggle with it. I mean, I'll take it, right? So,
yeah.
Right. How do you approach some of the aspects of coaching and being able to help develop some of this since it's so new? Your paralysis is fairly new. All of that kind of coincides together. But, just being able to help kind of guide some of this stuff.
yeah, well, and so like I'll answer that by kind of telling you my story through air rifle, right? So
Sure.
because air rifle was one of those. I was looking at the list of all the sports that DASA, the Disabled Athletes Sports Association here in
Yeah.
St. Louis, that they have. They've got Paralympians that play on their rugby team. They've sent a lot of people to the big show for a lot of sports, and air rifle was pretty new to them. Really basic program. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try it. Let's see what it's like. Excuse me. Ended up doing it. Was naturally pretty good at it. So I stuck with it. But the coach, before I had started trying it, wasn't there. They had moved to Kansas City. So there was like, it was really just kind of like an open, like an
Right.
open range day where you could just, you're using borrowed equipment, and you're just kind of, doing what you can, but there's no real coaching happening. So I ended up talking to them about it. They're like, Ryan, you've got this. You've been helping other people try to figure it out. Would you be interested in coaching it? Because otherwise, they're not sure that they're going to be able to continue the program if they don't actually have a coach. We require an NRA RSO certification for somebody to be able to run the range, obviously for like insurance purposes.
Absolutely.
But there, so I ended up getting that just to keep the program alive, because it was, for me, it was one of those things that, like, not only was I, just wanting to be competitive in that, but there's some kids that we have, and not even kids, just other shooters that have grown through that program or just wanted to try it, and they've been naturally good. Unfortunately, I haven't been making practice with my current, post hospital situation that I have right now.
Right.
But there's this, I mean, man, there's this little girl that we do like a summer camp for disabled kids at DASA, and on like one of the first days of camp, they set up the rifle range in the gym at the camp, and we're not shooting competitively. We're just teaching them how the rifle works, to do it safely, and just kind of plant that seed that, hey, this is a sport you can try. And there was this young girl. I mean, we're talking like under 15, and she was just naturally good, and she thought I was gaslighting her,
Nah.
because, like, she did that, and she ended up showing up to the first practice this year after the camp with her parents, and I was so stoked to see her. And then, had her on the big recreational target that we have, And then a couple practices in, I was like, all right, I'm going to turn the heat up on you because I think you're ready and I want to push you. And I gave her the Paralympic, Olympic, 10-meter air rifle targets, where the points are, a water bottle cap, right?
Yep.
Between perfect 10 and like a 6, right? So like you've got like maybe 3 millimeters or 3 centimeters of air to really be in the points there. And she was shooting all in the black. Like
Wow.
she didn't hit outside of the block once and just naturally. And I was really stoked, but I haven't been back to practice since. So I'm really excited to go back to like help push her because we had another guy last year that we sent to nationals, and it was just really cool. He's a quad, so he shoots SH2 with a stand, and was just naturally good. Ended up raising some money to get a really nice air rifle, nicer than the club rifles that we have, and ended up doing a really great showing at nationals. So he while he didn't place because the at nationals the obviously the bar for competition is pretty high,
Sure.
but he ended up shooting a 600, which is really good on his first competition. And so he made it to finals. He shot a 600 for the qualifier, which the qualify so like minimum qualifying score to shoot or to be able to travel like internationally for USA shootings like a 628. So for his first round to really only be 28 points away from being able to be at a really competitive level
Yeah.
Right.
was really cool to see. So I'm excited to see him. I put him in contact with the USA shooting coach because I was like, hey guys, I know this is premature because it's his first, his first real competition, but like I really think you guys need to be eyeballing him for the development program because
Right.
like, you know, I want to give him all the help that he can get because he's already beyond. I've been teaching him for a year. He's already beyond my level of, being able to coach him because we don't have the equipment. He shot that 600 without the shooting jacket and without, like
Just natural ability.
yeah, he really just had really the only thing he had was just some natural talent. And it was his first event with a new Walther, was it like the 400 or whatever,
Hmm.
really nice rifle. And
Made it happen.
yeah, he made it happen, which was funny because when he was in practice, he was texting me because I wasn't able to go to nationals to actually coach him because
Right.
I was within a couple of weeks of being able to go shoot paratrap. So, I was like, priorities, but we were
Right.
texting the whole time because when you're in a competition, there's really not a lot I can do for you because you can't talk to them while they're shooting. There's you're just really there for moral support and to give them the prep stuff and the
Sure.
post analysis, which I guess you can do remotely. Um, and so he texted me on the first day. So there's a practice day,
Hmm.
there's the qualifying day, and then there's the finals day. So on practice day, he messaged me and he said that like I was like, hey, there's going to be a lot of experience there. Take all the coaching you can get from anybody that's willing to talk to you when it comes to certain things. And he texted me and he's like, hey, somebody told me that I should be shooting with both eyes open. And I was like, yes, but we really haven't dabbled in that. And I
Right.
would tell you to not change anything
The day of the match.
the day before competition, right? Like
Correct.
that's something we can absolutely practice later on, but it's especially since he's like visually impaired, like not he's not shooting blind, but he's a glasses wearer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like shoot the way you need to shoot. Because what had happened was while he was two eyes open, the zero on his rifle was now off.
Right.
Right.
And so he started messing with that, and he's like, "Dude, I'm getting lost in this." And I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
"I was like, spend."
Chasing
I
it.
was like, "Spend 5-10 minutes, shoot one eye, get that zero back to where you need it, and
Right.
we can always work on the depth perception side of things and occluding one eye and that kind of stuff later, but it's just not something that we had done in like the 3 months, 4 months of practice on a weekly schedule that we were doing. And ended up shooting that 600, and I was just so stoked for him because it's
Dude, that's awesome that he was
yeah.
able to do that in his first competition. And Ryan, but believe it or not, the podcast goes really quickly, bud. And we want to kind of give listeners a kind of idea if they were interested in trying the adaptive shooting or the parachuting sports.
Yeah.
How would they contact you, or how would they get into it?
So
What could you say to somebody that's interested?
yeah, so you can find me on socials if you have any questions. I'm really easy to find on Facebook. I'm sure you guys will tag Instagram para_shooting on Instagram. ParaShootingSports.com also has all my
Yeah.
contact information. Um, and really just I would say, depending on the discipline that you're interested in, is going to be the different tactic to get into it. If you're interested in air rifle, start with Move United's website, and then see where your local club is, because there's several clubs all around the country.
Right.
Chicago has one. San Antonio, Texas has a really good one. Arizona, it's big. There's places to shoot. It might not be close to you, but hopefully it's not within. Hopefully it's not within like a day trip.
Yeah,
And if not, we can always figure it out. There's more than one ways to do it. Trap is one. I would just talk to your local hunting club. Like if you've got an accessible, like I know Montana's got one. I know there's a lot of other accessible hunter situations where they can at least teach you the basics of how to shoot.
Right.
Talk to them about going to shoot trap and just learning just the mechanics and figuring out what you need, whether it be a trigger adaption or I know some of the arm difference people, they have like a stick that comes out that goes to the foregrip.
yep,
So there's a lot of different modifications, and I'd really just say YouTube, man. Figure there's not going to be a lot of information out there, but
Find what works for you.
there's going to be some information on YouTube, especially in air rifle. Like nobody tells you how to do it, but if you watch enough Paralympic matches, you really begin to see what the equipment is, how they're doing it. And that's really the best way that I've done to even coach like the SH2 shooters, because I don't shoot with a stand. So
yeah,
I don't know the best way to do it, but I'm like, hey guys, you don't have to just set the rifle on the stand. You can like they're like bending it, right? Like they're really using that stand to their advantage. So those are things you can do. And the rules just tell you what you can't do. So until somebody at a competition tells you that you can't do it that way, we're gonna try and do it the way that works best for you. So
Right. Ryan, thank you again for coming on and sharing so much information. Um, with the new paralysis and all this different stuff, what's one misconception that you would leave the viewers or listeners with that people have for folks with paralysis, in your opinion?
um a common misconception, I would say, oh man, that's a tough one. I would say the biggest misconception is that there's a while there are people that do have, like, I go a lot of places with my wife, but I also go a lot of places independently. And I think the biggest misconception is that, especially if you're as independent as possible and you're out in the world alone,
Right.
people are always just like, where's your handler?
Right.
So which is true in
They
some
let you
cases,
off
like that.
leash.
right,
I'm
right.
generally pretty independent, but I also sometimes do need, admittedly do need some help and a handler. But it's also, I think that that's really it. Especially in a world where they let us have jobs now.
Right.
Vocational rehab stuff does a great job at helping you make as independent as possible to do those jobs. So I think that's really it. Is just people just not. The misconception is just them thinking that not necessarily that you can't do it, They're just
Right.
shocked that they're seeing you do it.
Right.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. Again, if the folks are listening, they want more information, it's Ryan Harrison of ParaShootingSports.com, and he's on Instagram. And we'll put the tags out there. But Ryan, we appreciate everything you're doing to get people motivated and get them out shooting. And we'll definitely have to have you back on if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, Missouri Disabled Sportsman gets me in on that snow goose hunt, and I can talk
Heck
about
yeah.
that. So
Yes,
We'll be
sir.
we'll be looking for pictures, Ryan.
awesome, man.
Absolutely.
We'll see you
Thanks
guys.
again,
Thanks again so
Ryan.
much.
Yeah, man. We'll do it again soon.
All right, perfect.
All right. You guys have a great day.